Hello, everyone. Me and my bang on news journalists, international, well researched comrades, and I don't know why I'm choosing that word, are back today to bring you some news updates. As you all know, Erik has been on the international scene daily, so I am sure he has a lot to tell us. And Laura is currently in Italy and she's getting news from the Italian perspective. And so tonight we are going to table this for you. And hopefully you haven't heard a lot of what they're sharing. Welcome back to the show, guys. Welcome, Erik.
Thanks for having us.
Hello.
So, Erik, you are the news junkie who never rests, and you said it's been kind of quiet. So why don't we start with what that means, and then we will loop back around to Laura.
Well, as far as I pay a lot of attention to our domestic, government agencies, mainly the law enforcement branches, just because that's what interests me the most. So I've just been watching the fraud cases start to emerge. It's nice to see that they're holding these people accountable for stealing American taxpayer money. So I'm happy to see that we're seeing arrests and prosecutions for that. I'm hoping that just in my home state of Ohio, we're finding out that there's a lot of fraud that's happening there, and that our governor has been trying to block. He's a Republican governor. He's been trying to block federal investigations into that. So there's a lot going on. I think there's a really good effort to go through a lot of these states and really get a handle on the amount of fraud going on. Everybody wants to compare the cost of the Iran war to things. Well, boy, if we would had all that money for the fraud, this Iran war cost wouldn't be all that expensive. There's so much fraud. Just in Minnesota alone could cover the cost of the Iran war. So we're seeing, and they just had, I think, 17 indictments go out today on the Minnesota fraud. So that's I like seeing that. I like seeing these individuals that are taking advantage of the American taxpayer in their positions of power to continually rob us, get held accountable.
Thank you, Erik. Well, I've been seeing you posting a lot of stuff on Kentucky.
Yeah.
So maybe we can loop around and discuss that later.
There's
Laura,
a lot to cover
on Kentucky. But, before I bring Laura on, why? What is it? I've heard that it's one of the main hubs for human trafficking in the United States. Is that why?
So there's a lot of significant importances with Kentucky. For one, as I've been really hands-on with a lot of cases there for about a year and a half now. There's not a lot that I don't know about what goes on in that state. One of the biggest aspects that makes Kentucky such a hot hub for crime is that their law enforcement is basically behind in technology. They're like a third world country. Kentucky is, and I'm not saying that because the people are. The people there, I've met thousands of great people in that state, just fantastic people. But the way that they conduct their law enforcement business, they are behind. They have counties that they have no idea how to investigate homicides. They have no idea how to investigate drug arrests. It's insane how behind they are from other states. And I've lived in several states and have been hands-on in those law enforcement areas. And I've never seen a state that just doesn't flat out know how to investigate things. On top of that, the Kentucky State Police is probably closely, I would consider them an organized crime syndicate. The amount of shootings that they get in is astronomical. And it makes me upset because, as we know in Louisville, several years ago, the Breonna Taylor case made massive headlines. Rightfully so. She should not have been shot that day. However, that's pennies in the bank compared to the rest of the shootings that they do. These guys are unhinged. They're out of control, and the government in Kentucky continues to enable that behavior. The prosecutors refuse to prosecute them. They just had a case that I've been following very closely, and it's going to be a huge part of my next book, about a guy named Doug Harless. This guy, Doug Harless, lived by himself, lived in kind of like a little neighborhood, kind of a country little neighborhood, several other houses in close proximity. Well, in Kentucky, they have what is called a judge executive. A judge executive is like a county commissioner. So, like where I'm from in Ohio, where I live here in Georgia, we have a board of elected officials that are county commissioners, and they basically handle the funds of the county and develop ordinances and whatnot. It's a very like bean counting technical job. They have one person that does that for the county in Kentucky. One person. That person is in charge of every single penny that comes in and out of that county. I think that's problematic. I think it habilitates corruption because you're an elected official, so you're basically unmonitored. But anyway, the judge executive has a weed eater stolen and some other like lawn equipment stolen from him. So they find out who did it. They go execute. They arrest the guy who stole it. He's in county jail. So he rats on the guy that he sold the lawn equipment for. So the worst case scenario, the guy who bought the lawn equipment should have been charged with receiving stolen property at the worst. Not even that serious of a case. So they go issue, the London, Kentucky Police Department goes out into the county outside of their jurisdiction, conducts this massive search warrant at about midnight for a stolen weed eater, and they go to the wrong house, shoot and kill Doug Harless.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, yes. Sounds like that's a problem.
Nothing got done in that case. Those officers are still walking the streets. The mayor of that town thinks it's funny. It's a giant disaster, and the community's trying to fight back against it because there should have been justice for Doug Harless there. But that's just one example of the hundreds of them that happen every year in that county. These guys are a shoot first, ask questions later law enforcement county. It's out of control.
As I listen to you describe this, I'm thinking this is not somewhere in the US. This is some third world country backyard type of policing. That's unbelievable.
It's mafia in Italy. La Cosa Nostra.
They actually have a name for it.
We used to call it La Cosa Nostra.
Yeah, they call it the cornbread mafia in Kentucky.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Unbelievable. Well,
alive and well.
You know, one of the reasons that my head is buried at least 6 feet in the sand is because these types of stories keep me up at night. So I rather just come on one day, hear what you two have found out, because I do not watch anything on mainstream, and then I feel like I'm caught up, and then I can go on, because when you're hearing these things, considering we're living in the country you call the superpower, it really leaves a huge discrepancy, or it makes it seem as though superpower is being abused. But let's not get technical with that. I'm sure you both agree with me that we have many, many problems here, more than we can probably solve in a year or two. So, Laura, Why don't you tell us what your research has produced for you in terms of what's going on internationally right now?
Well, I can't necessarily speak internationally. I can speak from the European perspective on what
No, but
people
you're
are
supposed to
thinking.
research all of the international.
Oh, the
Come
whole
on,
world,
Laura, you're
global.
slacking.
So from the European perspective, right now, everybody is like trying to see, why is there all this silence going on now with Iran? Everybody had their eyes on, by the way, on the Trump visit to China, and of course, the following Putin visit to China, and the differences between those two, as well as the similarities. And of course, that alliance is very strong right now, which is the Russia and China. And China did put Trump on alert that if he even thinks about interfering with Taiwan, there's another, they're not going to allow for that at all. So he was put on notice, let's put it that way. Xi Jinping put Trump on notice, not even think about Taiwan. And then I think because that was done, he also mentioned that we should not fall into this Thucydides trap, which is when an empire, that was an old thing between Athens and Sparta, when Athens was coming up as a another empire that was going to go against Sparta, then there was going to be a problem. And maybe we shouldn't fall into the warring aspect of that, but try to come together more as allies and use our strengths as empires as opposed to always be warring. So he was coming from that point of view, but he did put Trump on notice, which then gave Putin, who then followed with his visit after Trump, uh, gave him a little bit of a leg, if you want to say, to stand on regarding their war with
Give
Ukraine right
who? Don't
now.
mean to interrupt. Give who the
Yeah,
leg to stand on? Putin or Trump?
Putin gave
Ah,
Putin a leg to stand on because since Xi Jinping put Trump on notice for Taiwan, it gave almost a, what would you call a little permission for Putin for what he's doing with Ukraine. But then it comes to say that Ukraine might have been, nobody's really interested in the fact of Ukraine, but it was used as a proxy war. And really, it's not the war that we've always intended it to be because nobody's really interested on the Ukrainians, how many people have died there. If it's really about the Ukrainians, then you would have some sort of statistics, but they don't.
yeah.
So
Let's
that's
say,
what now the Europeans are thinking. And in Italy, because that's where I am, Meloni decided to really cut the cord when it came. I think she did it yesterday. She goes, "We don't have anything to do with Israel anymore. No Netanyahu." She's never spoken on that before and the genocide in Gaza. But she laid it out for the first time, quite delayed, I must say, but she said, we don't want to have any ties with Israel. We don't have anything to do with Netanyahu. And I think their allegiances are going towards Russia and China because they saw that there's no protection when it comes to being an ally with the United States. So that's the European, whatever global front that I can give
well,
you for right now.
I
Even
always
Trump
said
did
that
say,
I always said that Ukrainian war was more about
yeah,
money and those who were benefiting from the money.
hmm yeah.
From week one, when I did my research, that's what I discovered. And so much of what is happening,
Mm.
if people would just connect the dots, make things make sense. And then if it isn't making sense, then why would you want to fly with it? But I speak with people. I play devil's advocate. And all the people I work with know that I'm a journalist. That's what I do.
hmm
And they always try to get a perspective out of me, but I keep my mouth shut for the most part. Only a few select coworkers I am open with. And the thing is, here's what they say. The government said this. Or somebody at Harvard said this. And so
Mm-hmm.
what they do, or
Mm-hmm.
it came out of Stanford, or it came out of Yale. And I'm sitting there looking at them. Oh, so what I have noticed, is humans put blind trust in those they hold in high esteem. And even though those people may be saying something that isn't making sense, they have them held so high that they just settle for it. And
Mm-hmm.
this is the problem with the world. Now, you, Eric, and I, we're in the habit of trying to make it make sense. And when it doesn't, we go do the homework. And I think besides us, there are a lot more. And this is why some of the things that Eric is exposing now, they have been incubating for years. And that's why to you now, Eric, it's so big that how do you fix it? Because it's just like everything else. If you don't nip it in the bud, then it gets out of control. And it feels like nobody's got a handle on it. It almost feels like the law in Kentucky, based on what you're sharing, Eric, is like a joke. So you're kind of on your own there, basically, because anybody could come to your house and shoot you, and like you say, ask questions later. That's what we have come to now. So, Eric, based on what Laura just shared, what are your 2 cents? Because I bet you were on some international channels discussing Trump's visit to China. Xi Jinping, he's like, well, he's got, you know, he's he's playing the game of like, oh, I'm your friend, I'm your friend, I'm your friend, I'm your friend, I'm
Mm-hmm.
your friend.
Yeah.
What do you think
I
about that?
so I mean I understand the economic of importance of having business with China. That's evident. I think it would be unwise to cut economic ties with China or to go to war with them economically. Now, I'm glad we have the tariff situation figured out. China seems to understand that and they're okay with it now. However, as far as trusting China to be an ally, I don't trust them as far as I can throw them. They do too many backdoor deals. As big and strong as China wants you to think that they spend a lot of time working behind the scenes. And in my view, and I'm sure that a lot of the Muslim world and a lot of other people across the world would probably think the same way, is that's a cowardly way to do it. I know China, Xi Jinping likes to be strategic and blah, 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 blah. I think it's cowardly. We all know what he's doing. Um, but he won't go toe to toe with anybody. He says, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, and he never does it. However, different on the different side of the token, if I'm going to partner up with anybody, and I actually 100% support this, I would encourage our country to move into this direction is to try to find ways to not only economically but geopolitically partner with Russia. I don't think Russia is a horrible boogeyman like we've been told for the last 50 years.
I
I
agree.
do. Yeah, I think that I think Putin is much more sensible than what the global media gives him credit for. And if you ever
Amen.
noticed, our our media our media does not ever show a Vladimir Putin speech.
No,
Why you suppose that is? Because
because he
people
puts
here in
them to
America will
shame.
resonate with it and will say, hey, that guy's not so bad after all. But you have to
Mm-hmm.
actually go watch Russia Today or watch Russian media to actually understand what Putin is saying and what they're trying to do. So I am not an anti-Russia guy. I support. I mean, I'm obviously I don't support anybody dying, but I support the way that Russia conducts their business in their country. I think they stand strong all the time. I think Vladimir Putin. I mean, obviously, when World War II happened and the Germans invaded Russia, they the Russian people, the Russians ran out of bullets. So the Russian people had to go band together for their country, melt down all their family heirlooms just to produce more bullets. And that's what the Russian people do when
That's
things get tough. They come together as a whole for the motherland. At one time, the United States used to be like that, and we're not anymore.
Mhm.
And it's unfortunate because I grew up in 1991 when the first Gulf War happened, and all of America came together and were like, "Yeah, go get them." And even at 9/11, we all kind of had the same kind of perspective, like, "Oh, they want to blow up our buildings? Okay, we'll go blow up their whole country." And so we don't have that sentiment in that country pride anymore. And this divide has been going on for quite some time. We can point the finger at Trump all day, but this has been going on for a long time. As soon as Bush spent too much time in Middle East, that's when I think a lot of it started. Because people didn't want to have this big giant long layover in the Middle East. That spending that much time in war in the Middle East is not a good thing. That's it's a bank account drainer because there's so many places to hide. There, you would have to almost napalm and carpet bomb the whole country to get all the bad guys, and then you're going to kill a lot of civilians. So you can't do it that way. Even though in the first Gulf War, that's basically what we did to Iraq, but times were different back then. Now you can't carpet bomb anyone. So, well, Putin does sometimes, but that's a whole other different scenario. But I actually support, a partnership between the United States and Russia. I think if anybody is going to come together to kind of cleanse a lot of this crazy lunacy that's going on in this country, I think Putin has the mindset to do it. I've watched speeches where he's sat back and said, I don't really have to do anything except watch how Western culture is failing, how putting booty shaking women on TV and all these negative, evil things that we ingest on a daily basis is warping our minds and making us weak as a society. Putin is watching that in real time, and he's saying, I'm not going to let my country do that.
And I
And
think I told you a couple of weeks ago in sorry, didn't mean to interrupt, but I didn't want to forget this. I told you. You said we were the superpower. I said if we are, I, from the beginning, have been saying I like Putin. He takes care of his people. I've never gone to Russia, but I have a really good friend on the ground there now. And he takes care of his people. I have gone to China more than once. I've been to quite a few parts of China, and they have a way better infrastructure than anything we have here. So back to you, Erik. I just wanted and felt the need to insert that. I didn't want you to finish it and forget what I wanted to say.
I mean, I'm still gonna stand on my sentiment that we are the world power. We do hold the global economy. We have the largest military on the planet. We just have bad leadership right now. Our leadership is atrocious. I just watched Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass just give 1,000
Oh,
excuses of why she couldn't clean up her city, and
yeah.
like it's those types of things. You know, you go down in Atlanta, and there's as soon as you get into Atlanta, you just smell urine and feces. And it's these types of things. I've been to Moscow and St. Petersburg. When I was in Moscow, the first thing I noticed was the city's clean.
Exactly.
When I was in St. Petersburg, first thing I
Organized
noticed, the city's clean.
and
The
organized.
second thing I noticed was there's it doesn't look like there's cops there, but there are federal officers everywhere, and they're in plain clothes, and so you're safe. As long as you're abiding by Russian law, you're safe. So
And the
I
street
I,
and
I
the street is not the toilet.
no, the street is not the toilet. You that is going to be an issue for Vladimir Putin. He likes his country nice and clean, organized, structured, and it's because he probably has some kind of Asperger's syndrome. He seems like he's an Asperger's kind of guy. And so everything has to make sense to him. Everything has to add up and kind of be nice and tidy, and it shows because that's how he presents himself to the world. He's very in control. He's very monotone. You can't ever get a real good read off of him, and maybe
He
that's
has
a
a
lot of his
poker face.
KGB training. Yeah, he has a very, very good poker. I would not want to play cards against that man. He's going to take all my money.
I
And
can
that's that
only tell
KGB
you,
in them.
Tucker
So
Carlson interviewed him, and I remember how he put any of our politicians to shame. I listened to the
Mm.
address, and I'm like, I knew I
not a
liked
very high
that man.
standard, though.
And he also said he's waiting for the American people to find out that their leaders are eating babies and drinking blood, and that will never happen in Russia. So,
Yeah,
hey,
I I do kind of view it like that a little bit. Like Russia's probably the last normalcy stronghold in the world.
thank
I do
you.
believe that the majority
Thank
of the
you.
countries in the world are very corrupted by, when you go, especially when you go to countries like Congo or some of these like what we would consider third world countries. What is the first thing they do? They when we go in there, well, we'll sell our soul to the United States for this, and this. Give us some technology, and we'll you can have your way with our country. Every single one of these countries do this. They do it with Europe too. Europe shows up, they sell their soul, and that's the cancer that has spread throughout the course of society, and I think that's why, eventually we're going to see, some kind of intervention from otherworldly areas. You have
Yeah,
to
yeah,
remember
yeah.
when,
Sooner than later.
according to the Bible, and the Quran and the Torah, all three books, they state that when God gets mad enough, his wrath is just as powerful as his love. And so when you look at Sodom and Gomorrah, he flattened two cities and eliminated them from the face of the earth. We can't even find specks of those cities. Well, I think they kind of have now, but and you think why Sodom? What is Sodom? What were they doing wrong in Sodom? Well, think about the
Mm-hmm.
root word Sodom.
The word
Had
says
a
it.
Y.
The word
They
says
they were
it.
doing everything wrong. They
Mm-hmm.
were sexually explicit there. They were impure, and God said, "I've had enough. You're done." And poof,
Yep.
they were gone. So I think we're at that point, and I don't want to sound like a doomsdayer or a Book of Revelations junkie, but I do think we're at that point. If I keep thinking, man, if I was God, how happy would I be right now? And I wouldn't be very happy.
No. That's
So
for sure.
Well, you know, it's not like we want to compare ourselves to other countries, but sometimes comparisons can help you to see where a country is deficient, either by poor leadership or by design. In our case, I think it's a little bit of both. And when you understand the great agenda behind all of these smoke screens, then you understand why the infrastructure has been allowed to just fall on the wayside, because that's pretty much what is happening now. Every day people are striking because everything is going up, and this is my tune every week. I beat the same drum, and the cost of living is just unaffordable for the average person. And so I believe, like you said, Erik, that the time is very close to where we are going to get intervention that does not include politicians. And if they include politicians, they're not real humans. And
our our American political system, especially Congress, is a complete failure and a joke, and it has been for. They can talk about Trump's approval rating all day long, but the Republicans and Democrat parties both are below Trump's
Mhm.
approval rating. So I keep asking myself, why do they even talk about Trump when their approval ratings are worse by a significant amount? Why don't they clean up their own act first before they start criticizing everyone else? They're horrid at their jobs. Every Republicans, Democrats, I don't care if you're an independent, they're all horrible at their jobs. Not a single one of them. I wouldn't want to do business with none of them. They're all crooks, and I can't take it anymore. I
Well,
don't have
maybe
anything
those
to
that they're
give me.
reporting to, those that they work for, has set it up this way, and they're merely being little puppets following
Yeah.
the agenda, right? I mean, this is why I'm trying to shy away from this, because I know too much, and I've been told I have no filters. but I like the dots to connect. So I connect the dots, and then when they make sense, then I'm satisfied. But like you said, Erik, I think they're going through the motions right now. They're really not doing anything in the best interest of Americans. I think right now we are in an ego war, and those egos have to do with the various agendas and who is going to win. And that does not include the well being of the average American person. So, Erik, the war is at a standstill, and you are the journalist who's been on the world stage talking about it. Where do you see the whole situation going from this point?
Um, honestly, I'm not real sure. Iran doesn't ever seem to come back with anything reasonable to talk about, and Trump is steadfast in his approach as well. You got two bullheaded countries that aren't budging right now. And I know there's more global leaders trying to jump in there and try to work this thing out. But I don't know if it's going to happen. Iran just announced that it's a jihad now, so who knows how that's going to turn out. Uh, and Trump says we're locked and loaded. I almost bombed him again the other day. So
Yeah.
it's hard to tell because both, Iran's really not used to being on a global stage in an active conflict. Yeah, they've warred some of the Gulf states before, but we're talking about like them going against a big dog country, and they're not used to it. So we're not used to their tactics. We're totally doing things outside of our normal character in this conflict. So the world's not used to what we're doing right now. So I kind of hope that this just stays landlocked for now, in the attempt that both sides get bored. I hope they get bored and like, well, this isn't even fun anymore. Let's go home.
Well,
That's
they're
what I
not
hope
going to
happens.
get bored when
So,
you start having the fact that, you're going to run out. I mean, Europe's going to run out by the end of June, oil reserve. I mean, there are already lockdowns in Australia and Egypt for
Well,
energy.
Norway better fire up their oil production. Then they're the only European country that produces oil.
So Laura, and my ex-husband's father was very involved in that. I think he had his
Mm.
own rig in Norway when they were producing oil. So you're right, Erik. Laura, I wanted to ask you before the show, before Erik joined us. You indicated that something was going on with Cuba today. You want to tell us what that's all about?
Well, in terms of that we are supposedly going to take over Cuba. Now that's
What?
the next
What?
one.
What? Stop. Start again. We can't even manage
Well,
what
first
we
of
have
all,
here.
Cuba, if you want to say Cuba has been, I mean, how do you say? There's been a blackout for who knows how long. They're running on empty. Nobody talks about it. And USA has its eyes on taking over Cuba and being
Oh,
it.
come on. Russia has always been very aligned with Cuba. You think we care about rescuing Cuba when we have people
So I
starving
wanted to
here?
mention
What
what's
kind
going
of
on.
ignorant people do they think we all are? This
Well,
is just a little at Russia. Sorry.
Russia has, I told you that Russia put, I feel that's what we hear over here, that Russia has put Europe on notice in the sense that if they don't toe the line when it comes to what they would like, that what they want to do, Russia, there's this former, I don't know, who's a former advisor to Putin, still very, very well known in the Russian hierarchy, still advises Putin, and his name was, I think, Sergei Koronov or something like that. I don't remember exactly how to pronounce it, but yeah, Sergei Karaganov, and he was a former advisor to Russian President Putin. And what has been going on around here is that people are saying, he has said pretty much for everybody to hear that he has it has been pretty much said that they're going to do nuclear bombing of Germany and Britain.
Yeah, they were just doing drills with Belarus today.
Yeah.
But why would they bomb
This
Germany?
this had
Enlighten me.
Well, this advisor pretty much, I mean, they don't even nowadays, before you'd think, okay, they would be quiet about things, they wouldn't say it, but now they pretty much tell you, like, this is what, if you don't get in line with what we need or what we want, you're going to be bombed. And people say, well, when would this happen? Before it used to be 2 years down the line, in about 2 years. Now they're saying a year.
Yeah, Putin knows where the devil resides.
Of
Yeah,
course he
right?
does. That's why I
So then,
respect him. He knows.
yeah, so then you go, okay, well, US has been eyeing the whole Cuba thing, right? Strangle holding them and everything else, and they've been, I mean, barely surviving on anything, which is a little bit of what we could look for if something doesn't happen with this Hormuz and all these energy issues that we're going to have, because it's already happening in other countries, but nobody talks about it. But
But we don't depend on our moose for our oil. We don't have an
no,
oil
no, no, I'm
issue
not
here.
talking about us. I'm talking
Okay.
about, yeah,
Oh.
it's going to be like, the shutting down slowly,
Yeah,
slowly. And I'm kind of
and
wondering,
Putin can shut off the natural gas to Europe too.
yeah,
So Europe's in a
yes,
bad spot.
yes, very much so. That's what I'm looking at from this from this point of view, and what is going around, and that they're just blatantly telling you, if you don't do as Germany and Britain,
Well, I
first to
guess
go.
Putin is not that bad because he has a lot of power and he really doesn't exert it, right?
And this gentleman, this Sergei Karaganov, he mentions that it would be Putin is a Christian man. He really thinks about whatever he does. He does, you know, uh, has some spiritual, backing over there. But anyway, he
He has
thinks
a
about it.
conscience.
And that this bombing would be, he doesn't like the idea. Putin doesn't like the idea. That's kind of why he's stalling on it. And at the same point in time, because he's stalling on it, they're just saying, well, it would be a sin, but a necessary sin, because we have to save our souls. Because, I mean, Europe's out of control. So I don't know. I just know Italy is doing the World War II Mussolini, no longer Mussolini walk. It's like we're not on it, we're on the wrong, we started on the wrong side, now we're trying to get on the right side and just toe the line, and that's how I see it. So I don't know. It's very, so this thing with yes, you're right, Russia and Cuba, but that poor
I
country
know
is
that because
suffering.
when I was a young girl, I was born and raised in British Guyana until I was about 18. And I remember when
Mm,
the Prime Minister of Guyana had
mm,
usurped all the money he could borrow from the IMF. Then they
mm,
refused to lend anymore, and then he swung over to Cuba and Russia. And I was going to nursing school at the time, and the
mm,
majority of the doctors were Cubans. And I remember when a lot of things changed in Guyana, and that Cuba and Russia were very closely aligned, which is why I think when the US tried to go and invade Grenada,
mm-hmm.
with the excuse of having a medical university in Grenada, really? US invading a little tiny island because they have an American university. Uh-huh.
Mm,
Yeah. And I was young then and not even invested on this journalistic path, but was always curious. And it just didn't add up. It wasn't making sense. And so the fact that these governments are able to blindside so many educated people, quote unquote, educated people around the world with these stories, I'm standing there going, what am I missing? Are they
mm,
buying this? What am I missing? What is wrong with me? Because I am not buying that BS. And so I think until people start realizing that government politicians, a Yale graduate, a Stanford graduate is just still a human, and that when things are told to us by them, it doesn't mean it's gospel. You are responsible for getting the truth for your life, your well being, and your loved ones. And that's the bottom line. Because for as far back as I can remember, politicians have been bullshitting us. And we keep forking out the money. We work harder, we pay them more. We pay them more. And we struggle more. And that has to stop. And I know change is coming.
Go
It's
follow the money, right? You
imminent,
gotta
and it
follow the
has
money.
nothing to do with politicians.
Yeah.
Erik, we're almost, how quickly time runs out when we're doing this. What's your wrap up message today? Because we're down to 3 minutes.
Mm.
Well, first, I would be in support of going into Cuba and finishing off that regime. I have a lot of Cuban connections, and they all want it. They want their country back, and so I would be in favor of that. To keep it, no, I don't want to keep it. But however, wouldn't it be great to see Cuba thrive and have unsanctioned trade all over the world? I would really like to have a Cuban cigar without having to smuggle it. So, like that, like
I can tell you how to
you
get
think of the
one.
benefits of Cuba. Cuba would be the greatest vacation spot for Americans ever. We could that country could thrive. The people there could thrive, and so I'm in support of that. Like I said, I got a lot of Cuban ties. I want to see them have their country back and be great. I want to see the Cuban
Who's gonna
people
do
be
it?
great.
Russia or US, Erik? Who's gonna do it?
I don't know if
Russia,
Russia was
I
smart,
hope
they would hurry up
Russia.
and do it.
I hope Russia. Putin, please go rescue the Cubans. I've been to Cuba. And I spent 14 days there. My brother lived
Beautiful.
there. And
Mm.
it's a dichotomy. A half of it looks like it's stuck in time, and another half you're like, where am I? It's fully developed.
Yeah.
But the average person there was struggling back then. And this was like in 2000 something that I went.
But during that
So
Cuban Missile Crisis, didn't Russia have to pull out all of its stuff out of Cuba, right?
They were supposed to. I think they did for a short amount of time, but they've
Right.
been slowly over the decades have been
Yeah.
inching their way back in there. They spend a lot
Yeah.
of time in Cuba.
isn't
Yeah.
Guantanamo Bay in Cuba?
Yes, it's the
Uh,
only safe space that we have in Cuba. I'm surprised. I'm surprised Cuba never tried to get it out of there, but it is what
Mm.
it is.
Maybe they have no say.
They
Laura,
might not.
what's your wrap up message?
What's my wrap-up message? I always worry about the quiet. There's too much quiet for me to feel easy about it. It's quiet before the storm. Something's brewing. We all kind of know what's brewing, but it's definitely quiet. And I do definitely feel that in Italy, I'm like going, are you guys sleeping or what? Because all you guys worry about is what you're having for breakfast, lunch, dinner. I mean, this is the topic of conversation. Cosa si mangia? Oh my God, do you guys have any idea what's going on in the world? But there is so much. It's eerily. I don't know how it is on your
Quiet.
side, Aaron, but it's eerily quiet here.
Well, it's
You know.
eerily quiet for me because I just decided none of that. And
It's not like,
I
that
am,
tsunami, before the tsunami hits, you have that whole pulling back and
my attitude is dots didn't connect for me. None of the dots that have come down through those that are running our government and those aligned with them connect. None. And so I decided there's little I can do to change it. So I don't want to know. Erik and Laura will tell me when we come on here.
don't
And
know
in
how
the
accurate we
meantime,
can.
I'm going to make the best of a bad situation and help all the people that I can help. And when stupid people come at me, and I'm sorry, I'm not smarter than anyone, but I have to tell you guys, I encounter a lot of stupid people. And it's so hard for me, being the person that I am with no filters, to keep the tongue between my teeth and close my ears because I feel sadness for those who are still sleeping.
Mhm.
Because we're in a place that if you choose to sleep, you may not have a bed to lie on. So, all I can tell you is we don't come on here to blow hot air. I'm still hoping that something we say will trigger you to go and start doing some research and stop putting people on pedestals. You can't trust flesh, like I said, or policy. It's words on paper. You need to connect the dots and see what is happening for your own protection and for the protection of those that you love. Because you are going to have to be the one to choose the outcome that will protect and keep you safe. And we will be back when the very famous journalists can afford me the time for another update. Unfortunately, this week we didn't have any war updates because the war, as Erik and Laura have said, is in stall mode at the moment. You know, really quick, a question just popped into my head, Erik. Could this be the end, though? Do you think that
I'd like to think
this
that. I mean,
impasse could be the end?
I'm hoping. That's why I'm hoping that that the steam blows out of both of them, and they just say, "Oh, what do we do? Let's just go home."
Do you think it's going to be them for doing it, or China or Russia deciding it for them?
Either way, I'm not opposed. I want the war to end.
Right?
I don't care who makes it end. I want to go back to normalcy and
Yeah,
start attacking our own political system again.
exactly. Yeah.
Well, I don't want to be devil's advocate here, but based on why I know the war started, I doubt that it will end that way, although that's what we want. Because there was an agenda attached to it. And that agenda is not one that those behind will want to stop. So we'll see you soon. And thank you for following us. Bye bye.